Welcome to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered with Perry Clark. This program looks at mental health from unique perspectives and shows you how to manage your life by finding the knots that help you and stay away from the ones that could be a disadvantage. Now, here is your host, Perry Clark.
Hello all, welcome back to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with you, and I want to remind you that this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only and does not constitute working with a licensed professional. Please seek out a professional in your area to work on your unique issues, and that may also include doing it online. And I know many of us have fatigue from being online as possible, but your healing and your wellness is important. So for today's podcast, which is also coming out in conjunction with my Pride podcast, I'm going to introduce you to someone that I met recently because we were both on a panel for the Good Weekend Good Friends, Weekend with Good Friends of Jaxus and Elias, based off of the Blasphemous Tome podcast. And we were both here talking about queer horror. And the individual I'm going to introduce you to is Ambrose, who goes by she, they, is an award-winning TTRPG performer, that's tabletop role-playing games, and creative director and founder of the Othersider studio, a horror and mystery-focused TTRPG channel. They are also the keeper of the award-winning nominated Arcane Corpse series, a Monster of the Week actual play. They started off as the main cast of the Lovecraftian podcast and has been delving into the world of horror TTRPs ever since. Welcome to the show, Ambrose.
Thank you. Hello. It's nice to be here. Wow, that was a lot of stuff. Like written out, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's true, and that's true too.
Yeah, that's a common thing, especially for some of us, is like we don't really realize just how much stuff we've done.
Exactly. Hello, it's wonderful to be here. And it was a pleasure meeting you at the panel and talking about queer horror with you. So yeah.
Likewise, and putting some of the things in context about what it means. But before we get further into talking about that, can you give everyone a bit of how did you get here?
Oh, the question that people often don't ask themselves, how did we get here? Well, I had started in regards to being creative. I always done art, always done creative things growing up in general. And I kind of funneled that into work as a user experience designer. I learned how to do that. I'm originally from New York City, moved to Chicago, very big on tech. Found out that a lot of people needed that in terms of apps, websites, and stuff like that. So my graphic design and illustration experience got funneled into tech. And while in Chicago, I met a group of people that taught me about tabletop role-playing games. It was in person, obviously, during that time. So a lot of people invited people over the house. And I was introduced to Call of Cthulhu that way. And I wasn't that big in horror, weirdly enough, because I was like, it's just, gore fest, and stuff like that. And that's what I thought. And then my friend that I met there had said, there's more than just that. There's psychological horror. There's all sorts of horror out there. Let me teach you. And we started watching horror movies together. Plus incorporating that into our campaign, our 3-year-long campaign of Call of Cthulhu. And then from there, started the Lovely Craftians podcast because that friend was also in the same group. And that's Cassie from the Lovely Craftians podcast. And we started recording that. Obviously learned a lot about audio recording because it started off really bad in terms of we need to be better about our audio. So then it got better and better. And then from there, people started recognizing us and we started getting followers through that. And people started reaching out to me and Cassie to work with. I'm not sure about the other ones, but like I think everyone got like reached out to at some point. Like, hey, did you want to? Some people didn't want to. Some people did. And from there, went through streaming. Some people reached out to like, hey, this is going to be streamed video, and all this other stuff, or it's going to be live. And I learned a lot about how to role play and improv a lot from there. And I've been doing it ever since. And right now, currently, I decided to make my own channel. I have a certain way I like to do things. I like to record and edit. I like immersion in my actual plays. And I like to take my time. Maybe that's the perfectionist in me. Maybe that's not a great idea. Maybe it is. Who knows? And I'm in certain projects, usually in the horror variety. Some people still keep on trying to get me involved in Dungeons and Dragons, which is okay. I like it, but I'm not a high fantasy person. That's it. It's okay. It's not my cup of tea, but it's all good. No worries. And I'm here. Making actual plays in the horror variety. So, yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, because I think that aspect of the immersion adds something that we don't get, but that we generally get when we're reading a book that we can to build in our minds, but we don't necessarily get that same quality when we're listening to a podcast. Unlike what they used to do back in, like when radio programs did like the Lord of Orphan Andy and all of that, or the War of the World standpoint.
Yeah.
So the aspects of being able to produce these things, the lovely craftians, right? Pronouncing, or even the outsiders, your stuff with Outsider Studios. All of this is stuff that I know there are many of us that listen to it and wonder about the production, the creation of it, and especially linking it to TTRPs, which sort of creates that drama or audio drama factor of it. What can you give us some insights into all of that?
Like to produce, like, and make these things.
Sure, let's start there.
Well, for actual plays and stuff like that, when I had started, it was a lot about like, oh, hey, I want to have fun and make something, right? Like that's a part of it. But also, like, if you want a certain vibe and quality in regards to that, you need to make sure that like the people that you're asking to do, you're kind of testing the waters and playing this game, and you're like, hey, we all vibe very well. We know how to check in with each other. We know how to use safety tools, like, and stuff like that. And I've had that a couple of times where I had a table where like, oh, this is a really good table. And we know how to fully immerse in terms of characters and not break character. And then when you have those long, intense, or even like funny moments in character with each other, you're like, wow, that's amazing. So you trust those people, you contact those people again. And from there, if you feel like you can make further quality work with them, I would say that you start using, well, for me at least, the immersion part came in with like, hey, it's really awesome or helpful to make immersion in horror scenes. So having the right music, I started putting in sound effects, not just background tracks, but essentially like if they're opening the door and they're entering a room, and that room has a horror in it, those sound effects will come into play, like strings or whatever that might be. They discovered something. Someone's running up the stairs and they didn't see who it was, kind of things, so that like it draws attention. That might not be the best thing to do personally, just for the people listening, because that was a lot of work editing wise, to like note everything, to like put in time stamps and stuff. But even just having background sound of some sort to like change the ambiance a little bit pulls people in even a little bit more. You need to be a little careful about how much sound is being brought in terms of like don't have it overtaking the people talking. Besides that, like you can create further depth of a scene more so than you ever would have thought. I would say that there was moments when I thought like, oh, I thought the scene was okay. It was really good, but like, oh, I feel like something's missing. And then I add the sound and it just amplifies it so much more. Production was something else, I would say. Because I was just a performer. So I was just like, how do you produce? So I learned how to do that with the Arcane Core series. What ended up happening was like transferring from one channel to my own and learning how to record, do full coverage. So like recording in Zoom and then recording in OBS just in case. Like having separate audio tracks just in case as well. Just thinking about all those things. And of course, there was a lot of like issues that I ran into where I was like, crap, what do I do here? I don't know. But having those backup recordings at the very least helped so much. So yeah, learning how to produce was a journey, but it is very beneficial if you want to make actual plays the way you want to, I would suppose. I don't know how to do live very well, but I'm great at pre-records. So yeah.
Because the pre-records, you have time to put that polish onto things, and especially to be able to use the sense of sound and audio that comes with it, as opposed to what we get with any number of movies that goes on the big screen, which also includes a degree of audio. Would the suspense music in the background that you're not paying attention to help sell the scene, but would it feel different if it wasn't there? So you're also an award winner. So could you tell me a bit about the award and how what it connects to and what you created?
Yeah, so I had won an award last year, the Crit Awards, for Best Chaosium Player. So Chaosium, they made Call of Cthulhu, the TTRPG. I'm assuming that had been from the Lovely Craftians because, like, I've been playing Call of Cthulhu for, I think, like 6 years up to that point. And I had felt very what is it like? I have felt like I got a lot better as a player playing my favorite character from the Lovely Craftings podcast, which is Glenn Bishop, who used to be a cop and then realized that the police force was crooked in this new world. It took place in a world where, hey, look, what happens? Ooh, we get to talk about some lore on this thing. So the first 2 seasons of the Lovely Craftians, not to spoil, something happens that changes the trajectory of the world forever. And so season 3 and 4, we take on different characters where this world now you have like different realities. Everyone knows different realities exist. They know that there's different elder gods out there, but like some people believe, some people don't. Ghosts are clearly real, so it's not like, oh hey, people believe in these things. There's whole corporations dedicated to different realms and realities and stuff like that. So my character, former police officer of New York City, had a crooked partner and found out the worst way possible that they are. And called, what was it, like IA, Internal Affairs. And that blew things up, that like a lot of people stabbed him in the back. And then he moved to Chicago. And Chicago wasn't any better. So he decided to leave and just become a PI because, wow, this sucks. Like, I don't want to be a cab, like all cops are bastards, including me, is how he felt. So And I wanted to be like a hard-boiled detective. And that's when people started calling me Daddy Glenn. That was great. Like a good time. But that was, I felt like one of my best performances as Glenn this end of three up to all of season four because it got really intense. A lot of people did really good work in that one. Me, Cassie, Sam, and Ashley did a wonderful job in regards to that. And those are the other cast members. But Glenn like took me back. I did a lot of crying in character for that one because of all the things that were going on between characters and stuff. And it was good. It was really good. So I think that when I got nominated for that, I was like, who in the world is like noticing me and like the Lovely Craft? Because like not a lot of people talk to me about the Lovely Craftians. People know I'm in it and people have listened to it and I know they have, but no one has ever gone up to me and said like, oh yeah, Glenn, how are you? Like nothing like that. So that was, and also like Cassie got nominated for best Chaosium GM. So nominated, but I unfortunately did not win. But I'm trying to get her to get because she's so good. So I'm like, hopefully we can get this going again. But it was the first time I was like perceived, or I felt perceived, where people were like, someone out there nominated me. I don't know who it was, but thank you. Yeah, it's still a little surreal to say like, oh, I'm award winning Ambrose a little bit. Well, I at least know about like award nominated Arcane Core because I put that forward. And that's still a little surreal. But yeah, I love making characters ever since then that have deep backstory that they bring forward. Very hard. It was the first time I realized that like I can immerse into my character with people. And I bring that forward even after the Lovecraftians too.
So it sounds like this immersion in character is one of the appeals for playing TTRPs for you. Because I mean, it's very easy for a one shot to have almost a one-dimensional character, but this depth sounds very appealing.
Yeah, because I do love having fun just and not having to delve, but I have a lot of fun diving into characters that are just depth. I'm not going to say like tragic backstories only because some don't. I fell in love with like a game called Something's Wrong Here, which is you can get it on itch, I believe, itch.io. And essentially it's like I forgot what the director's name is, but I think it's the director of Twin Peaks or I forgot his name. Everyone knows who he is. I'm really bad at names. I'm sorry, audience. Where people who have a lot of tragic backstory or like heavy character flaws enter into scenes, and it's essentially being followed by your doppelganger in each scene. So every scene is like something is wrong here, and someone plays into that as like the only additive mechanic really, where oh hey, someone has a little clue that they need to like act out while in the scene, and it was the quickest that I immersed into a character and understood them and connected with them. And it's only meant to be played in one session. It's like less than 3 hours, I think. And it's improv boot camp is what I would call it, because you're just a character and like you're setting the scene yourself, and maybe you have a facilitator, and that's it. You have nothing else. You have no other mechanics. It's just here's the pitch, now go. And I fell in love with immersion because you can act out with other people that also love immersion. And then it's just watching people that are just like invested. Like I have popcorn out. And I'm like, I get this for free, while like I'm playing and watching these two or three characters go off. And I'm like, this is better than a movie. And seeing something that we made together, based off of the characters that we created in our own minds, is really intriguing. I do love playing characters that like for one shots that like, oh hey, like this is just for fun, and having that mild immersion is great. But that's I don't know why it's important to me. I'll just say that, like I really don't, but I do love seeing it because that means someone bought their craft in and also had fun at the same time. So yeah.
Lovely. Well, I think something interesting that you've said, and I've heard of some other ones with the improvisation, because most of the time whenever I hear people talk about improv, it's about being silly, like whose line is it? As opposed to going into the seriousness of a scene where you're dealing with a cosmic monster about to rip your face off or rip your soul apart.
That's true. I take it as like, well, like with TTRPGs, it is improv with a lot of rules, depending on what you're playing, right? Call of Cthulhu, you're just rolling 2 dice. You're rolling your percentile and your D10. But like you have that to lean on, and then you can add as much character as you want. You don't have to improv if you don't want to. But if you do, like that just adds all the more, personally. And then you have games, like I said, Something's Wrong Here, where there is no dice, there is no mechanic. It's just, here's the scene, here's the bit that you need to like note, go in and be like, and here's the character that like always will be here, because it's like 6 characters. I think they'll always be the same. Now interpret it how you want based off of the scene, and you can add whatever you want. You can change whatever you want. You can change whatever you want, and go and have fun. And it was a lot of fun for me because like I've, at least with tabletop, I've been doing improv through it ever since. I haven't done improv professionally. I am a theater kid, but I've never improved before. I was like one of those understudy types, or like quick quick theater sessions kind of situation. So I was like, oh, this is a lot of fun. And people are like, what did you do? And I'm like, you gave me a thing and I made a thing with this person and it was fun. But TTRPG is improv with steps in it to help with learning how to do it. And the more you're like, I want to make my character and go through with it, or you want to lean on the mechanics, either is fine, personally. So yeah.
Nice. Well, before we go to break, could you give the elevator pitch for the Lovely Craftians and the Arcane Corp?
Sure. Oh, elevator pitch. All right. So for the Lovely Craftians, we are playing characters in a world that has been through a awakening of sorts, a revival, realizing that realms beyond ours exist, the dreamlands, realms where elder gods live, aliens, different shadow entities exist, magic of all sorts and occult exist. And our characters are living through that and realizing that and working with said entities and such, and trying to solve what is going on in this world. In terms of something is trying to enter, someone is trying to let a elder god in that its only job is to destroy the world. And we're trying to stop that from happening. We're not sure how or where, but like we're scrappy, wannabe detectives. One is an actual detective, and we're going to do it. So that is the elevator pitch there. For what we have currently. And for the Arcane Core, there is a world that is hidden among ours. The headquarters of Arcane Core is in New York City. There is magic that exists. It's an a dark urban fantasy where there is an organization that is hidden by magic that keeps it tempered. But they can't keep their eye on black market trading in terms of magic. They can't keep their eye on magicians who want to be more than human. The Arcane Corps has different hunters of sorts that go across the country that keep an eye on things, that catalog things, that hunt entities, or try to reach out an open hand to temper politics in terms of the monster community, whether it's fae, werewolf packs, vampire disputes. They would like to not use violence, but sometimes it's needed. In the Arcane Corps in New York City right now, an entity has broken out of containment, and it is up to a cell known as S12, Seeker Cell 12, to get to the bottom of it, because without full blame on them, technically it is their fault without realizing it. But this is a plan that this entity has had in place for years. They've been in containment for years. They were just an ends to a means. They shouldn't blame themselves. And that entity is known as the Doll Maker. And as ominous as that name sounds, it is correct. You should watch out for this entity. They are a transcendent class, and they have been marked as fatal encounter if you try to interact with them. So be on your guard. So yes, that is my elevator pitch. I hope I did well with both.
Oh, very much so. And it's like, okay, I'm going to have to try and shove some more things into my podcast listening. Because I already got a backlog. Not to mention my book and comic book backlog, but it's like, I got
gosh, yes.
got a backlog there. So those can be found on most podcast players, folks. So check those out. And we'll be back for more in this and second half. So stay tuned. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with Ambrose, award-winning TTRP performer and creative director founder of the Othersider Studios. So stay tuned. We'll be back shortly.
A little birdie told me Voice America is on X. Follow us at Voice America TRN.
Our lives and the world around us can get messy and frustrating. Untangle and Grow Counseling's focus is to untangle that mess and make sense of it, so you have a good foundation to build and grow from. Visit us on the web at untangleandgrowcounseling.com. Perry Clark offers individual psychotherapy, couples and family therapy, and adolescence therapy from a variety of coping materials and resources. Visit untangleandgrowcounseling.com for more information.
Live up to your full potential. You've heard that for years, but now there's a channel to help you get there. Introducing the Voice America Empowerment Channel. Get motivated, hear about success stories, and positive encouragement. The Voice America Empowerment Channel is the home of the world's top life coaches, entrepreneurs, and success experts. Listen to the Voice America Empowerment Channel. It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. Success starts here. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com. It's your world.
You are listening to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. If you have a question or comment about our podcast, send an email to pclark@untyingknotspodcast.com. That's pclark@untyingknotspodcast.com. And now, back to the program.
Hello all. Welcome back to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with Ambrose, who is a award-winning creator and director of Othersider Studios. And we've been talking about horror and TTRP and their work. And so I'm going to touch base a little on the conversation we had when we were doing the Weekend with Good Friends for Jackson Elias, part of the Blasphemous Tome podcast, we were doing the queer horror conversation there. And you mentioned, as you were talking about the lovely Craftians, the standpoint of building characters that are not always tragic, and how often the idea that queer horror has to be tragic or based in tragedy. Just to quantify and qualify the aspect of the characters being queer.
I see. I apologize. Can you repeat it? Because like my partner was like blowing their nose like a horn. So I apologize. Can you repeat that?
Not a problem. So we're talking about the idea that from our queer horror conversation, the idea that and you mentioned when you're talking about your character with Lovely Craftians, that idea about the tragic backstory, and that especially when it comes to queer horror, the idea that our identity as queer also has to have that tragedy as both a qualifier and quantifier for why there's a queer horror as opposed to just horror.
Yeah, in terms of that, like just in general, that doesn't just go for queer. That goes for anyone that's perceived as different to the mainstream, I would suppose, or like in terms of whiteness, let's say. Like, oh yeah, there has to be a bad tragic story that envelops or takes over and ultimately kills in terms of queer horror. Like a good example is or it's meant to be done off screen. They're not even that important, which kind of sucks as well. Like very similar to like It Chapter 2, where like, oh hey, like a queer couple getting murdered literally in the first, like I think the first 20 minutes I think of the movie. Was like, wow, okay, I don't understand what the point of that was, but okay. But the point I would suppose that they're trying to aim for is that, oh hey, if there's a reason to bully you, because that's the whole thing about it in the first and second part is like, hey, if there's a reason to bully you or make you feel smaller, I'm going to use that as a means to like take you or kill you or devour you, essentially, at the end of the day. Didn't like that that's what they went for, but it was easy to go for that thing. And using tragic backstories and kind of escalating, I suppose, the tragedy element. I'm trying to find the right word here. Trying to suffering. There we go. Like trying to enhance the amount of suffering someone has seems to be without thinking for any minority that they go for anyone that isn't a part of that demographic, I would say, is the storytelling part versus like, hey, we all have tragedy, different like forms of tragedy. Let's explore it equally. Like in TTRPG, for instance, no one person is the main character. There might be sessions where someone has more time than the other because they're exploring something, but everyone has a backstory to be explored and they deserve to be. So yeah, like that's what I would say personally, is like, hey, we all have tragedy. Let's all explore it together, but let's not be overtaken by it unless that's a direct choice that you would like to. Like, hey, I want this character to die in a blaze of glory, or I want this character to die from their backstory because it's too late to save them, but like we're gonna like do a good old college try with trying to survive it because that's the direction we want to go with this character. Not as a storyteller, I wouldn't just take that agency away from a player. I would ask like, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Because it seems like your character, you want them to like jump off a cliff with this backstory. And you're like, yeah, that's exactly what I want. I'm like, okay, as long as that's what you want. Just ask the question, essentially, at the end of the day. But in queer horror, don't just suffocate characters with suffering. I think that's that doesn't do anything for anybody. There's no like gratification, even if like there is suffering, as long as that character goes through a decent character arc, in my opinion, then it's fine. But if it's just for the sake of suffering, then what was the point?
Right. There's an aspect of, there is a certain degree of design that goes into a character arc versus you're just trying to show something off or go for what would almost become sort of the low branches of trauma porn. And trauma porn can be not only black trauma porn, there can be queer trauma porn, there can be neurodiverse trauma porn, and there can be also with the intersection black, queer, neurodiverse trauma porn as well. Sadly.
And I think it's also the concept of we already suffer in this world that's for people that are neurotypical, white, a world made for this type of person. And then it's just like, hey, we're already going through it as is. We're not like necessarily going through the worst of the worst, but being queer, all those things, actually, all that intersectionality on being queer, neurodivergent, and queer on my end, it's like, wow, I have to educate people about certain things, or not, because I'm too tired to educate you about like me. Or like, oh, hey, I have a lot of positive things though. Like I've had several children come up to me and say like, I love your hair color, and wanting to know how they can get it done. And hair color doesn't necessarily equal queerness, but apparently I was told that like having colored hair, as someone that like autistic on my end, is really helpful to identify people if you have like face blindness and stuff like that. And I realized going to one of my conventions that like a vast majority of people had colored hair, and they were like, yeah, it's super easy to find out who you are or where you are without even seeing you, because you have curly, very curly, coily blue hair, and not a lot of people have curly blue hair. So like I know who you are, and I don't have to like double guess it, and I feel great to know who you are versus me having a hood up. So I would say that like, sorry, going back to the point, I went down a little hole there, is that like we already go through somewhat of a horror show day to day of like trying to fit in, hoping no one like comes after us because of half the social media showing what happens when like you confront a Karen or something like that. But seeing that same suffering amplified for the purpose of horror is kind of horrifying. I guess that's like the point. It's meant to be horrifying, but like that's not a form. Even horror is a form of escapism, or to me, as a teacher of certain things, and it doesn't teach anything. You're just kind of reiterating the same thing that's happening in our world, and you're just making it worse because maybe that's what you're used to seeing, people, the minorities, suffering all the time. So I don't know how to feel about that. Whenever I see that, I'm like, I feel like you didn't learn anything if you're putting this in your media, but it is what it is, I suppose.
Very true. Which I think leads to usually a natural other question is, how does the TTRP and the horror work to help and support your mental health?
Oh, let's see. With TTRPGs, it helps with when I make characters, I really do think that like I'm making a character that has nothing to do with me. Like I was like, yeah, I'm gonna make this like for instance, Glenn. I thought like hard-boiled detective, like doesn't have a family, didn't want a family, like workaholic, had nothing to do with me, dude, from New York City, who had a younger brother that he took care of because their mother was absent, like and stuff like that. Has nothing to do with me. Like I had but I put myself in his shoes. I understood his side of things, and that made the character come out more. There was moments where like I took things hard, like character bleed happened, and I'm like, what in the world is this? What is this character bleed? What do you mean? Like, I'm not supposed to character bleed this guy. And it was a way for me to process a part of my psyche, I suppose, which is a person that has done everything for his family and everything for his work and hasn't been rewarded for it. Maybe his little brother, right? But like, he hasn't been rewarded for it. He did everything right, and his partner turned out to be dirty.
Right. And
the half of the department that didn't go down for like what they were doing turned their back on him, except for like his boss, because his boss was like, something's fishy, we're gonna find out what it is.
Right.
And kept on doing everything right, and then just kept on getting shat on. And I was like, man, I know how that feels, where like you think you do everything right, and I think everyone has gone through that. And I think I was going through something similar. So I was like, I thought I was doing everything right with work and stuff like that. And I explored that. And then I made a character recently called, his name's Aaron, werewolf, they, he, and it was a fun game. Like, that game was amazing. Like, man, I wish it was recorded, but it was a home game. And I explored my anger, my frustrations. I explored not being perceived or being looked down on. Also thinking I know everything when I don't. With this character, I explored a lot more than I ever thought. And another character who I didn't expect I didn't really bleed them, but like, which is great. No Name, from, was it, man, I forgot what the name was. Not Spirited Away. Oh, not that. Oh, not that. But like, like true. But like, I was like, all right, yeah, like No Name, no. This character I played was a Monster of the Week character that I made, and he had lost his identity. He had no idea who he was, so he had amnesia, and he found out that he was a demigod and a father. He lived 2 different lives. Reincarnation was a thing for like the Argonauts or something like that. And he found out one side of him was a womanizing like man that loves adventure, objectifies women or objectifies everybody, because like he's like, I don't discriminate. But another one who had a family, who had a husband and 2 kids that he loved so much, and was manipulated into falling for a goddess, and cut away from his family to house Pollux again. So at the end of it, like, it was kind of experimenting with mind, body, and spirit a little bit, where like you love all sides of you, even if like a side of you is really sucky. So like Pollux is a womanizer, but is a hero. And there's what was his name? Paul, who had a family but cheated on his husband because of magic interference. And then No Name, who doesn't even exist, but walked in this body in order to keep it moving until he could find those 2 halves again. So it was like experimenting with all sides of yourself, and when they're in harmony, they come together, and they made this new super version of Pollux, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, so yeah, like exploring with different sides of yourself, even when you make a character you thought wasn't a character that you were going to relate to. It was doing a deep dive in exploring different sides of yourself. That's what I like the most about it. I don't really make characters that I don't do that with, unfortunately, even when I'm trying not to. I was like, yeah, like I'm going to try to make, the only way is like I make a happy-go-lucky character that has nothing to do with backstory or anything like that. They're just silly, and I don't feel like I can dive in that character very well, but we'll see. So yeah, like I think it's an exploration of the psyche or different parts of me that I like or don't like that I want to explore without realizing it. So yeah.
Well, I think that actually better answers the myth and reality question I was going to ask than anything that we could have cooked up in these last few minutes. But I think that's a better one. And I think that's a great place for us to go ahead and wrap with knowing what TTRPs can do for you, have done for you, and do for many people who enjoy it. And maybe you're willing and open to exploring that for yourselves. And especially if you're queer, especially if you're neurodivergent, especially if you're anyone in the Black, Indigenous, people of color aspects, TTRPs are there for you. You just got to find the right one that fits you.
Exactly. There's so many now, so you can explore to your heart's content. So please, horror. I would also just say, like, horror specifically helps with exploration of the deep dive into. I'm trying to find the right words here. Hyperbole of a situation, I would say. So, like, something that's like, oh, hey, like, we're going to explore this thing that we're terrified of in real life. And we're going to make it horror. How do we do that? And I love that aspect of horror. A good example is, was it like The Night House? Have you heard of The Night House?
The name's familiar. I can't, but I know that's also that standpoint that a lot of people can call. A lot of various horror can use Night House in their name. Yeah. So it's a little hard.
That's true. But The Night House is exploring the reason why a loved one passed away. And the exploration of, and this is like content warning, by the way, suicide, where like, hey, why did he do that? And then finding out that like, hey, you also had a brush with death. And what is on the other side? Like those are things that we ask ourselves when someone passes away. Like, why would they do that to themselves? And where did they go? Right. Amplify it to like, hey, what do you believe in? I believe in nothing. And nothing, this is a spoiler, nothing was an embodiment of the other side where like, hey, nothing accepts all into their embrace when you die. It is a physical thing. Nothingness already proves that there is something on the other side, even if it is just nothing. So that was very intriguing, exploring those concepts of like someone that you care about, that you love very much, passing away at their own hand, finding out about all the bad things they've done. So like, and the good things, and learning about them when they're not there. And finding out about the other side and what it is, and if you want to even know. So yeah, sorry, I'm taking time, but like I wanted to like add the horror part, where
it's beautiful, and it's part of that aspect of being able to wrap this up in a nice, neat bow, including the aspect of where people can find more of your stuff, or if they wanted to contact you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ambrose. I go by she, they pronouns. You can find me everywhere as SS Ambrose, except for Twitter and Instagram, which is SSAmbrose _. I am the creative director and founder of Othersider Studios, where you can go to Twitch, which is Othersider Studios, YouTube as well. On Twitter, it is Othersider CD. And Bluesky, which is Othersider Studios altogether. We are making horror stories with full immersion, and we are coming out with a new thing soon, which I cannot talk about, but please keep an eye on it. It is also horror, and it is going to be an anthology series of sorts, so please stay tuned. And that's me.
Alrighty. Well, I want to thank you for being here and helping continue our celebration of Pride Month with this episode. And we got more coming out for the rest of this month, folks. So please stay tuned and be well.
Thank you for tuning in for Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. Be sure to join your host, Perry Clark, for another episode on the podcast coming soon on the Voice America Empowerment Channel.